Good evening, and thank you for tuning in tonight to a weekly dose of property management bullshit. My name is Derek Higgins, and I'll be your host every Saturday at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time as we talk about all the property management has to offer that really no one wants to talk about. We're going to kind of go over some fun stories and different facts each week. So join in with us every week as we go through a different co-host and a different topic. This week we've got Christin. She is a training consultant for a consulting firm out of Dallas, Texas. She deals a lot with the fair housing regulations and training material that's put together for that in HUD. And tell us a little bit about yourself, Christin.
I've been in the industry for about 5 years, and basically we cover a lot of topics in the consulting firm that I work for. We cover everything from fair housing to property management, asset management, dealing specifically with your maintenance department and things of that nature. There's just so many topics. But yeah, basically I make sure that people stay informed and consistently trained in federal laws and state statutes.
That's great, because I've been doing this about 20 years myself, and I do know that in each position that I have held, all the way down from leasing when I started, that their training was, sometimes a chore, but it was constant, ever growing. There's always something different that's changing in our industry, and it's extremely important. I think one of your biggest investments in a company outside of your employees is the training that you give those employees.
Yes, I think it's something you really want to put in your budget. You really want to forecast, I am going to spend this money to make sure that my employees and the people that I work with are trained and they're informed.
And most companies will actually pick up the tab for that.
Oh, yeah.
At no cost to the employee, just so they can, keep their employee educated on all the changing things that happen. And it also really protects the company. Knowledge is everything in this industry. You've got to be very careful about the things that you say, the way you say them, the way you come across, and that you're treating everybody fairly, or you could end up in a massive lawsuit. And because of that, we do have a very, very large fleet of attorneys behind our podcast because there has been some concern that I might possibly say too much or say the wrong thing. But, part of me, knowing me for as long as, you and I have been best friends for, 10 years or so.
Let's keep it real. I
don't have much of a filter.
When I'm very fortunate that some of the people that I work with are really just upfront and in your face, and it's great to work around the people that I work around and in the industry that they work in. But you really, you have to have a sense of humor and you have to have some thick skin because you're dealing with egos and you're dealing with some really off the wall stuff. And I think a lot of people really hide behind that professionalism that you have to have in order to maintain that level of customer service. But I feel like we're gonna put it out there. We're gonna give it the way we really think it is.
We're gonna give it the 1-2. We're gonna really lay it all out there.
But it's not that we're saying this is solid. This is our opinion.
This is our opinion, yeah. But a lot of our opinions are going to be based off of a lot of research.
Oh yeah.
That you've obviously done because this is really your forte, your specialty. We're so excited to hear, what you're bringing to our show tonight. And again, thank you so much, for joining us. But, I do got a few questions I want to start with.
I've got a few questions too,
Well, I wanted to start by saying I think your job's a little boring.
Oh, really? Well, I think your job's a little boring.
No, honey, my job is far from boring. You need to spend a few days on site.
No,
and it's like a 3-ring circus.
That's the difference between me and you. I don't have that market face. They're gonna get my you face so quick.
Ooh,
seriously.
We're gonna have to edit that out.
I'm gonna be looking at them like they're crazy, and they're gonna be like this bitch, and I'm gonna be like this bitch. So I commend you.
It sounds like you're exactly
for being
where you
on
need
the
to
forefront.
be.
Oh yeah, behind the scenes.
Behind the scenes. So I guess with the experience that you have in this industry, what is one of your biggest pet peeves?
I wouldn't say that I have a pet peeve because what I do is so broad when it comes to the training aspect and all of the topics that we cover. I might have people that are working on making their property smoke free, And that might be what I do for a week. And then next week, I get a lot of calls about occupancy standards and fair market rents and things of that nature. But I think right now it's service animals and assistance pets. And I think the reason that it's such a hot topic is because it's such a relaxed regulation. There's some gray areas that I feel have been exploited, and maybe I'm on a different side of that. But
it seems like everyone nowadays has some type of emotional support animal, which is fine. I have one as well, but it just seems like most of the days now, anyone just go on there and spend $9.99 online and print out a little form
Absolutely.
and get a cute little vest. And I've seen
and that's what I from a property manager, they get it from the first forefront. Like, you are dealing with your resident, you're dealing with what you might think is a very ridiculous request, and some of them are very ridiculous. I've heard some things. I was watching a TV show this last week that in the middle of the grocery store, this lady walks in with it was a beautiful goat, but it was a goat, and it was an emotional support goat, and it had a vest on, and I just thought this was absolutely ridiculous. But then it got me to thinking, I wonder whose property she lives at. Well, you never know. I know, especially like states like Las Vegas or cities like Las Vegas, states like Nevada, excuse me for that blunder, but they have emotional support horses, mini horses, and they're allowed in the casinos. They have public animal policies, and they call it a public accommodation instead of a reasonable accommodation. But yeah, they've got horses. In one of our specific trainings, one of my training director's favorite emotional support animals to show is actually a turkey. Yeah, she has a picture. I don't know what year. I want to say somewhere between 2010 and 2015, but it is an emotional support turkey on an American Airlines flight.
Well, that's fantastic.
Yeah,
was it the one that was like pardoned by Bush that year?
I'm not entirely sure if that's the turkey that was pardoned, but she definitely has a picture of a turkey that was an emotional support pet. Yeah.
I have an emotional support animal of my own. You and I have been friends for many, many years, and I'm blessed to have that friendship. But I don't know what I would do without my emotional support animal. And she's, she doesn't come with a fancy vest. She doesn't come with a certificate.
She does come from a long line of emotional support pets.
She does. And what she does come with is a very nice letter from my psychiatrist.
Oh,
and that's really all I need.
Yeah, when you think, we'll again graze that topic here in just a little bit, but the documentation that you need for those emotional support animals and service animals. And Derek is right. All he needed was a letter from a psychiatrist. It can get a little more vague on what letters you can get and actually how certified those people are.
So. And we use that term certified very loosely.
Yes, very loosely.
Because neither one of us have a medical degree.
No, not at all. But I could write a letter of recommendation for an emotional support animal, and it would be accepted.
I would love to have a letter for my Rogie, because I'd actually like to get her an emotional support pet for herself, because I know the cross she carries is just... It's got to be super heavy, because that baby has soaked up all of my tears for the last 5 years.
Oh, well, she's a good dog. And again, like I said, she comes from a long line of them. Her sister, Maggie, was actually, she was a ESA for my mom personally. And my mom suffers from diabetes and kidney failure. And the dog really helped her through kind of noticing infections and onset when sugar was high or low, or if someone needed to be notified. She's very supportive, but in the same light, Maggie was she was very protective of her.
She was extremely protective.
She would nip at people. Like one time she nipped at the nurse. So there are ESA pets that have to be regulated. You might have to muzzle your pet if you have to, but Miss Rogie, she's just a little doll.
She is, and we'll talk more about emotional support animals as we go on, through this episode, because that's all this episode really is about, is fair housing regulations and how they relate to really the new ESA animals that we have. So I don't have any more really questions for you, so let's go ahead and move on.
Well, I've got questions. Like, you haven't really...
Of course you have questions.
Like, okay, this is all fairly new to me. Like, I've known, Derek for about 10 years, and I didn't know until about 2.5, 3 weeks ago that any of this was even going on. And I'm like, hey, look, man, like, I'm your best friend, so what's up? Tap into this.
So this idea kind of came to me over the holidays, this last holiday, and I put a lot of thought into it, and I think ultimately the goal that I want to reach here is kind of to give not only myself a platform for those to see kind of how my clock ticks, but also to give a platform really for those who have not had a chance to have that platform. I've worked with professionals over the last 20 years or so that are just absolutely amazing professionals, but sometimes I feel like here in the big city, a lot of people that don't come from these big companies are a lot of times overlooked. And I think giving them a platform to show really who they are and how their clock ticks, can only help boost their career.
Yeah, and I would hope the keyword you just said, professional, and it's like we might get a little unprofessional here, just a little bit.
We are about a half a bottle in this evening, so I'm going to take a minute to thank everyone that has come out to join us tonight. Tonight is our launch episode. We're surrounded by family, friends, colleagues, and we are extremely grateful and thankful for all your support. And for the 12 listeners that we have out there, we're excited to tell you what we do.
Yeah.
Do you have any more questions?
I do.
Of course you do.
When do I get paid? Where's my check?
Ew. These greedy hoes.
I guess it's all pro bono.
Yeah, so everyone that has offered to join my cast as a co-host, of course, is doing this out of the goodness of their heart. You may not have realized that. And for future co-hosts, that's what this is. So over the last few weeks, we have reached out to different groups that are on Facebook that are property management based. And we have asked to receive questions from viewers that have, inquiries about where we're at with the laws and things like that. And so when we get back from after our short 60-second break, we'll kind of go through all of those and, kind of dive into each one of them. And if a story starts to flood from that, we'll just keep it moving. If not, we'll just move on to the next one.
Okay.
All right, let's take a break. We took a quick 60 seconds to, quite honestly, refill my wine glass because I like to drink. And I took a couple seconds to go show some love to my emotional support animal. Again, shout out to Rogi for being super quiet while we record tonight. And so like I said, when we first started this about 10 weeks ago, we sent out a bunch of discussion panel boards questions for different groups that are on Facebook for property management and maintenance support, and kind of gathered a few questions from our 12 viewers. And we're going to go through those kind of briefly a little bit and pinpoint on each one of them. You're the expert in this area. I may chime in on a few things, but I'm really excited to hear your opinion, and not just your opinion, but what the actual federal law states. So with that being said, let's kind of just jump right on in. We've got Margaret from Boise, Idaho. Hello, Boise, Idaho. I'm glad we got a listener up there. A resident has asked me to make an accommodation to his disability. I understand I'm required to make accommodations, but I'm not sure he really has a disability. Can I ask for that verification?
Absolutely. If the disability is not obvious, you can ask for documentation. I mean, obviously, like the question states, if they're in a wheelchair, you don't need to know whether it's a bum leg or spina bifida or, anything of that nature. What you do need to do on this form that you ask, whether you create it or you get a sample form from a consulting company like the one I work for, you definitely want to make sure that they fall under the definition of the disability or the Fair Housing and 504 Rehabilitation Act of 1973. You want to make sure they fall under that definition of a disability. The next thing that you want to make sure that this request or form that you have them fill out entails is that it does cover the accommodation they're asking for and the nexus between the accommodation and the disability. And what I mean by nexus is the relationship. What is this accommodation going to do for said disability? And this verification can come from their doctor. It can come from someone who's not a doctor but possibly a nurse that deals with this person on a weekly, monthly, or yearly basis. It can come from a reliable third-party source like someone's aunt or uncle, mother, or father.
My sister Shannon can write me a note. bless her heart, she could write me a note that says I have got deep psychological issues, and we have to accept that?
Yeah, it is a reliable third party. Very, very. I mean, it's a touchy subject because you can't just go, "Hey, man, what's wrong with you?" And then when they tell you what's wrong with them and they say it's a disability, you don't have the right to judge that disability. If they say, "Hey, I have a mental disability that, deals with anger issues and not being able to hold a job," that's not your business to decide. If the federal government is giving them a check and stating that they are disabled, then you take it. And again, most people that go down that avenue, when they say they're disabled and they're asking for accommodation, they truly are. They're normally receiving a check as well, and that's normally your first avenue. For me, as far as I'm concerned, but yeah, definitely you can ask. You can't ask what's wrong, but you can get a verification form.
What's wrong with you?
Lots of
Although
things.
many of times
Lots
I
of
have
things.
thought about asking somebody, what is wrong with you? So let's get on into the second question. We've got James from San Antonio. Do I have to waive the pet deposit for a resident with a disability who requires the use of a service or companion animal?
Yes, you do. Yeah, you do have to waive that deposit. You cannot charge them a monthly rent fee or pet rent. I guess that's a thing. You can't do that, especially not for service animals or emotional support animals. Now, however, if this emotional support animal or service animal is destroying the unit or the property itself, you can charge the resident, because even if you're waiving the deposit, that doesn't give them carte blanche to allow their animal to use your unit as a bathroom or a chew toy or anything of that nature. Then you kind of get the other aspect of it, and that's where people are like, well, this person's emotional support animal, I've already let them live here. They don't pay a deposit. They're not paying any sort of pet fees. And all I get are complaints that their dog is barking all night long. Well, unfortunately, you can't do anything about it unless that animal is a direct threat to your residents or you. That means the dog attempting to bite you or attack you, being aggressive, things of that nature. Now, I've seen muzzled emotional support animals.
I wish somebody would put a muzzle on my baby. I wish somebody would put a muzzle on my baby.
It would be the tiniest little muzzle in the world.
Oh, it'd be tiny.
It would be
Rogue's like 4.5 pounds.
I don't even think she's that much.
She may not be. I put her on a very strict diet here lately. Because, like myself, she's getting a little thick around the waist, and
aren't we all?
Nobody wants a thick one.
Hey, I don't know. I think a few people would.
Shout out to those that do. Give me a call. Hit me up on Facebook. All right, so let's get on into our next question. Out of Austin, Texas, we've got, looks like Michaela. On an assisted property, I have already provided a visual door knock indicator for a hearing impaired resident. He wants a different one that is more expensive. Do I have to provide it?
This is kind of a yes and a no kind of thing. We're going to go with the no side first. If this resident is hearing impaired and they're just asking for a visual door knocker that looks better, like, hey, I really like that red one. It looks better on my kitchen wall than the black one does. And it does not provide any additional features that would assist that person in their disability, then I would say no. Now, however, if this is, a visual door knocker that originally has 720 HP or whatever they call it, and then the additional one has a louder ringer and a better display, then I would say yes, provide that accommodation. Because when a person asks for an accommodation, they know their disability the best. They live with it daily. You don't. And they're going to know how to better accommodate it. Now, if they're taking advantage of you, that's one thing. But again, you're going to need to prove the reasons behind why you're denying this person. And just because it's more expensive is not always the best route. Now, if you do take that route, you've got a very stringent road ahead of you as far as proving that that's an undue financial burden to the entire property. And when you really think about the extra $50, at the end of the day, it's a whole lot better than getting slapped with fair housing.
19. We're going to keep talking about 19. I just can't get over that. $19,000.
19,
Is it worth it?
19, it's a little over 19.7 as far as first offense goes.
Hard pass for me.
Yeah.
Hard pass.
And again, like
especially
we're
if we're only
reiterating.
talking about, maybe just the difference of $40 or $50 on that
Yeah.
upgrade.
Oh, yeah. You
Is
really,
it really
think
worth?
about it. Think about it. Put yourself in there and go, do I really want to go through a 2-year fair housing review and then have to go through paying court costs,
right.
civil costs, and then there's a really big possibility that you're going to be in the newspaper because of it. And just, I mean, come on.
Especially if you have some of the residents that I've had in my lifetime.
Some
of them have got Channel 5
everybody's got a
News
story to tell.
on speed dial. And it's really just important to make sure that you just weigh your options out. You, like I said, for a difference of $40 or $50, it's a lot better than $19,000.
If I'm sitting there and I'm looking at the person and it's really just a matter of cosmetics, I'm going to tell them, hey man, I cannot approve this because you think it looks better. Yeah. But if you can come up here and show me that the specs are better, absolutely.
Okay, so our next question is out of New York, and we're not going to say his name because I feel like it could possibly get him in trouble, because this is a very off-the-wall question. Our community has 3 pools. One has been designed for adults only. Is that permitted under the Fair Housing Act?
No, it is not. No.
Shocking.
That's a hard no. And if you have got a pool that is already segregated and has been segregated, you need to change that quickly.
Yes, I would talk to your management team, your direct supervisor.
I would be big red flag would be coming up if my management team's telling me that's okay, especially if you're under them. If you're just, the leasing agent and the big wigs are telling you, hey, yeah, we're keeping this adults only, you need to really be questioning some things. Just to be a little more descriptive on why it's a hard no. And the reason it's a hard no is it's discrimination against children on a familial status.
Yeah.
You cannot interfere with children playing. You can, okay, there is an aspect where if it's a direct harm to the child, or you can prove that it's a direct harm to the child and that's why you're keeping them from it, like, hey, if you've got a big metal, concrete, those ditches, those drainage ditches, and you've got one right beside your property and you find that a lot of kids are playing in it,
It causes a threat to the child.
It does cause a threat, because under high water or rain conditions, that could sweep that child away very quickly.
And you see it every year with a car that just wants to drive through that high
and
school.
that's unfortunate. That is an aspect where you could prove that putting up a sign that says no children playing is okay. And the reason that I say that, or no children allowed, is because it is protecting the safety of the children. Now, telling someone, this is an adults-only pool, that's not protecting the child. That's being a little selfish on the adults' part, because they're enjoying the pool by themselves. So, a hard no. That's discrimination on familial status.
Yeah, so we got our next question. You were talking a little bit about play areas, so this ties in really well with Amanda from Dallas, Texas. Can we designate a specific play area on property? We have a lot of children as residents here, and we're very concerned that they will play in the parking areas.
Again, this goes hand in hand with the first question, and again, like I said, if you have like a big drainage ditch where children play down in there, that's something that's causing harm to the children, and you can prove that it's causing harm, and you can put up signs and gates to keep them out of it. But a parking area, unfortunately, you cannot keep them out of the parking area. Those kids could be playing in the parking area while mom and dad are putting the groceries up, and that's not your right to tell them that they can't, especially if they pay that rent. They pay to park there. But what you can do to be proactive and to keep your children safe and to really put them under that light is to you can add signs. You could put children at play signs. You could put slow speed limit signs, 5 miles per hour, 10 miles per hour, speed bumps if your property doesn't already have them in high traffic areas. At the nighttime, especially in the summer months, children like to play outside a lot more, especially in parking areas, because they're well lit.
Yeah.
Where
they should be.
Yeah, absolutely. Make sure they're well lit. You don't want your tenants feeling sketchy, whether it's the kids or the adults. So
right. So, and one of the things you always want to do is, check your budget for signage and things like that.
Absolutely.
But, if your budget
it's within means.
Yeah, if your budget doesn't allow for that, one of the great resources that I've used in the past is reaching out to, our tow companies or our security companies. And they've been great at providing signage, a lot of times free of charge. And if it whatever the cost is, if it keeps our kids safe, then I think that's the only. There's no other option.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. So our next question comes out of Las Vegas, Nevada. You're very familiar with Las Vegas because you spend some time there doing. What is it that you do up in Vegas?
We have a yearly conference out there every year in the spring months, and this I've been 5 years in a row. This next year is our 20th anniversary. So I just actually got back about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago.
That's great. You have a great time.
I did, but a week in Vegas is a little too long, whether it's for pleasure or play. So
I would probably have to agree. I flew out with you to meet you that one time out there.
Yeah, it was a couple years
not
ago.
Not to go to the event by any means, but just to enjoy Vegas. And I had a great time, but I was only there 3 days, and that was too much for me. So I don't know how people live there. But let's get back to Zamora out of Las Vegas, Nevada. She says, are support animals allowed actually inside the pool?
That's a hard no for me. They are not allowed inside of the pool. And the reason that I say that emotional support animals, service animals in general, not allowed in the pool. I mean, a bird flying by, landing in a pool, that's a whole different story. But when people and residents are willingly allowing animals into the pool, that's a public and health and safety code issue. And that supersedes anything. That supersedes state, anything, ADA rules. You want to follow those local laws, because what's going to happen is your health inspector comes out or someone gets a wild hair up their ass and they're like, hey, you know what? That dog was swimming in the pool and it disgusted me, which, everyone has that right. That dog could have fleas, mange, anything. There could be people in the pool that have allergies. There's a multitude of reasons why these animals are a health and safety code. And the reason that is that, they're going to come drain your pool, cite you,
Which can be very expensive to the properties.
Yeah,
you got to think about the cost of sewage to drain it, the cost of water to fill it up,
the
cost
staff,
of chemicals,
everything,
the labor, so it gets fairly, expensive.
And then you got to deal with the residents that are upset because it's the hot summer months and the pool ain't open.
Lord, I have been on a property one time in my life where the pool was remodeled during the summer months instead of the winter months. And I'm telling you, it was an absolute nightmare because all the residents want to do in the summer, really in the spring, and here in Texas, February 1st, March 1st, they're ready to get into the pool.
I'm not ready.
Well,
I'm not ready to get in the pool. It's too cold for me.
No, I agree. But the kiddos, they love it, and they want to be able to use it every chance they get, So, but they're kind of allowed to be now if they're emotional support animals, or if they're support animals of any means, they are allowed to be in the pool area.
Okay, now I would say that this falls on state and local laws, but the ADA says that service animals are allowed in the pool area. In the regulation, they don't really give you a fine definition of an emotional support animal and what they're allowed to do. But I really think at this rate, when you start to think about it, you've got to really put them on the same plateau as a service animal, irregardless of, some of the certifications that might come with either or. I would say the animal is allowed in the pool area. I would not say that the animal is ever allowed in the pool itself.
No, never ever. Hard no for me.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got a question which is probably going to be one of my favorite questions. In the company that I work with currently, based here out of Dallas, I am on the corporate team as a marketing director. And we've got Manny out of Dallas, Texas, who is asking, how does fair housing law apply to advertising? And for someone that does a lot of advertising, I'd love to know, although I do already know, but I'd like to hear kind of what your viewpoints are and your thoughts and what the law says as far as, advertising, whether it be on social media or in print, or where do our guidelines kind of fall there?
I think the really big thing about it is in a property management standpoint, advertising is one of your biggest segues into filling your occupancy.
Absolutely.
Okay, and if you don't have good marketing, you don't have good occupancy. And if you don't have good occupancy, you got bigger people up the chain telling you need to fill this property up, or you're going to be dropping rent. Nobody wants to do that. But marketing is actually a very important part of the property management aspect, because there are specific rules that have to be followed. All marketing pieces for housing, the equal opportunity housing logo, needs to be presented somewhere on your basic website if you use a personal property website for your marketing. You definitely want to use the slogan or statement if you're using it.
All your Facebook posts for marketing, whether that be on like Facebook Boost,
actually
definitely
on
the property's Facebook page, somewhere there you want that indicated.
Yeah, and if you're using media where it's vocal, where you don't have an opportunity to display the logo, you definitely need to state the slogan.
And we will be displaying the logo at the very end of this podcast, just to cover any
and if you're not sure,
anything.
Look up the Equal Opportunity Housing logo. They offer it everywhere. It's a free picture. They make it readily available for people. But you definitely also want to have your fair housing poster posted in your local office somewhere, just stating that you are following regulations, that you do understand those guidelines, and that everybody is not going to be discriminated against. And a really hot topic right now is that
I was going to ask you, I almost know what you're going at here, because I was going to ask you, you've heard about this. Let me guess, you're fixing to say something about the new lawsuit against Facebook.
Absolutely.
As far as fair housing.
Facebook is currently, I think it came out a couple of weeks ago. I'm not completely versed on the date that it was released, but Facebook actually is under a lawsuit with fair housing right now, under discrimination. What they're saying is that when you post your marketing using your property, even if you're still using the equal opportunity logo, which most people are pretty diligent about, there are filters within Facebook that are being, by fair housing, considered discriminatory on familial status, on origin status, as far as like locations, where they live, demographic, age range. Even, I believe. So there, from what I've read in the current statements, Facebook said that they were a little surprised by the drop in the lawsuit, or them filing the lawsuit against them, but that they are currently trying to work with Facebook. And I think it was you telling me that even in the last few weeks since it's happened, they've changed a few of the interface options.
They have. I've noticed that from the back end, because I do a lot of the marketing through Boost. So I see exactly what you're talking about as far as being able to depict what age group or what
zip code you want to aim at.
Use, and things of all that nature, and that's all fixing to go away, But again, we are not members of Facebook. We're not attorneys, so best of luck to them, and however they work that
absolutely,
out.
absolutely. I really do think that Facebook being the mecca that it is, and fair housing being what it is, that they will come to they'll come to something, because when you really think about it, Facebook, I see it all the time. Yeah. Facebook's a big free marketing choice for properties, and I get it. But don't forget, I know it might sound stupid for a small property to, market themselves on a radio station. But when you're talking about a housing authority or a metropolitan housing authority, letting people know that wait lists are available, that accommodations are available to students and everybody, use every aspect of it. But Facebook, that's a touchy subject right now. I'm not going to say stop using Facebook, but definitely be aware that Facebook is it's in trouble with fair housing right now.
And I'm sure, like I said, they're both very
I really think it'll be resolved.
Assets in today's world, and I'm sure they'll come to an agreement.
Absolutely.
I hope so, because like I said, I do the bulk of my marketing for the properties on Facebook, the bulk of it free, and then the rest of it, boosting it out to different areas and stuff like that. But I've made sure that when I do that I make sure that I am staying in accordance with all fair housing laws, and not really dictating where it's
definitely
going.
You guys,
shotgun method.
If you are using Facebook and you're the person that puts it on or deals with IT or the marketing company that you might use that runs your Facebook for you, because like my company, we got a Facebook page, but it's a completely different consulting company that runs it for us. They kind of just, we have like little meetings with them. So basically, double check those filters. Be like, we got that checked. We need to uncheck it. Just to CYA. What do they say? Cover your ass.
So who's responsible for that first fine that you were talking about earlier?
This is kind of a new thing, and there was actually a lawsuit, Mayor versus Hawley in 2003 about vicarious liability. And what I mean by vicarious liability is if you work for a management company, there's a chain. There's the management company, there's the property manager, and then there's the occupancy specialist, like your leasing agents. Okay, if a leasing agent is discriminating and the property manager is not aware of this discrimination, unfortunately, the property manager can still be held liable. And it can go even further up the chain. Even if the property manager and the property are not aware of the discrimination, they're vicariously can be held responsible for that.
Yeah, which goes back to why it's so important to make sure that you invest those dollars into training for your staff.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So we've got one last question from Jasmine out of Houston, Texas. And, I get actually asked this question a lot, and I've heard many different answers, but I'm interested to see kind of what your take is on this question. What is the best answer for when a prospect asks me, what kind of people live here?
Okay.
Heathens. All heathens.
Hood rats. We got some meth.
You know which properties you are.
We turn the lights on.
What is the best answer for that? To keep everybody within a legal thing from not being able to,
if you want to,
keeping everybody safe. What's the safest answer for that?
Because number one, I'm going to tell you right now, there are people that come into your agency or your property that work for fair housing, and they're just like those secret shoppers at Taco Bell or Whataburger that critique their experience. These people come in here and ask you crap questions like that to get you to say something wrong. Okay, so when someone asks you a question like that, the first thing you should be going is ding, 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 fair housing review, fair housing review. If you want to be sterile about it, all of our residents have, you can say all of our residents have qualified for, what am I going to say?
So we lease to anyone that qualifies per our leasing criteria.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone that's leased here has fallen into the criteria for our leasing options. Again, another thing to say is we have a great multitude of residences. We, I don't even get specific.
No,
we've got large families, people with pets. I would just say that we have a very, well and versatile community. Yeah.
That's an excellent answer, actually.
Me personally, I've lived in apartments and I now live in a home, but I do my own research. Drive that property at night.
Oh, absolutely.
Pull up some criminal records. That's public knowledge.
Yeah.
It
usually
get
doesn't
up
cost
in there.
you anything at all. Always educate yourself about where you're going to live, where you're going to work. Make sure the decisions you're making for yourself and your family are valid decisions.
And then me, just being the person that I am, because I really try to see it from every aspect. If someone's asking me what kind of people live here, I kind of gotta wonder, well, what kind of person are you?
Yeah.
That shouldn't be your concern. Your concern should be that you get what you pay for, and that you've met the criteria. Of the place that you live.
And that reminds me of a story. I guess probably about 6-8 weeks ago, I received a message from somebody on Facebook that was interested in renting at one of my properties. She was coming in from the Oklahoma area, and she had a disability. She started off the conversation telling me a little bit about herself, a little bit about her disability. You know me, I'm just kind of approaching it very, very quietly, very calmly, and she pops out, and the next thing it says, I know you probably don't want somebody with a disability living on your property, but I'm looking for a second chance at life. And I am instantly thought,
like how many people have rejected her?
Yeah, what if, or what if this is like you described, someone that's out there looking for that next check in a lawsuit? So you always, like I said, always have to be very, 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 very careful with everything you say. And again, always check your state and local city laws as far as they pertain to fair housing. Thank you, Christin, for joining us tonight. When we took that quick wine refill break, I came up with a couple last questions for you that I think will be helpful to people coming in. Do you remember day one?
Oh, absolutely.
If you had an opportunity to go back to Kristin's first day at what she does, what would you tell yourself to really set yourself forward and embrace what you're getting ready to take on?
Have thicker skin, and there's a lot of reading. Those books and those regs can get pretty hefty and wordy, but definitely to have some thicker skin. When I came into the industry, I was a little bit younger, and I wasn't.
I would say so.
I was a little shell-shocked with the level of ego that really came with working with higher level executives, and
I know that all too well. I've spent
definitely.
20 years in this industry, and I would say just about almost every team I've been a part of, there's been that one person that has the ego that just loves to boast about himself, and it can be difficult at times, but at the end of the day, there's a huge difference in your confidence level and being egotistical.
Oh yeah.
Again, have, like you said, thick skin. That was probably one thing that I would say to myself if I could go back. I was very young when I started this. 20 years ago, I was very young. Very young.
You see how he's emphasizing that very part.
But thanks to my doctor, I don't look a single bit different than I did 20 years ago. I probably just look a little bit better. But I would say, if I could go back, I'm such an emotional person, and I'm so passionate about what I do. And with that, because I'm such an emotional person, I think having thicker skin is something that I would tell myself as well, because there's many times in this industry that you'll get your feelings hurt, whether it's by your coworkers or
a resident,
or specifically a resident. I can't tell you how many times I've been called this, that, or the other by a resident, and at the end of the day, you just gotta, as Jinx Monsoon says, water off a duck's back and keep it moving. I wonder what old Jinxie's up to. I hadn't talked to her in a long time. And then I've got one last question, so, gosh, any advice you would have to newcomers coming on, whether it be, maybe in my industry or, more focused on what you do, what advice would you give those newcomers?
Your training never stops. All the time. You should be about it. You should be like, hey, you know what? All these new multifamily regulations are coming out and things are changing. This emotional support and service animal stuff's a really hot topic, and I don't know what to do. You need to integrate yourself into some form of training, whether it be listening to podcasts, whether it be using private consulting companies, whether anything. Keep yourself, definitely. It never stops.
It doesn't. Like I said, I've been doing this almost 20 years, and it's been 20 years of training. Because things, like I said, are ever changing, and you want to make sure that you're up to date with those things. For those of you at companies that may not have training programs, there's separate things you can do on the side. You can, for a fairly inexpensive price, you can sign up with like Grace Hill, who does amazing fair housing training courses, as well as best business practices and maintenance, and they cover, there's nothing they don't cover. Or at the end of the year when you're working on budgets, talk to your executives, hey, and most times companies already have these training programs set up. It's usually the smaller companies that are just breaking in the last 5 years or so that may not have them. And I think it's real important to make sure that you vocalize the need for training within your company, and make sure the person that you're hiring for that training is extremely educated in what they're talking about and what they're selling. Because if they're not confident in themselves and they don't know what they're saying, then we're just wasting our time. And again, Christin, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We are about out of time for this episode. We may have even gone over a little bit, but that's all right. We're going to leave that to the editors to figure that out. Thank you to the 12 viewers that have signed in and watched us tonight. I'm sure by the time we move on from this episode, we will have a lot more. And honestly, I don't even know if we have 12 viewers, to be completely honest with you. I know we got more than 12 people here tonight. So thank you, everyone, for coming out and supporting myself. While this has been a dream of mine for not very long, it is something that I'm very excited about. So make sure you tune in every Saturday night at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. Again, my name is Derek Higgins, and I am your host. And I guess on departing ways, all I can say is listen, learn, laugh, and we'll see you soon. Thanks. Good night.